Hello and welcome to Onesies, a podcast of one season wonders and blunders. My name's Andrew,
My name's Emily.
and we are on episode 5 of our watch through of Fishing with John Lurie. Um, we're doing episodes 5 and 6, the Dennis Hopper two-parter,
Yeah,
which it must have been a very tense week when people were waiting for the resolution back in
very,
92. They must have just been
very.
on the edge of their seats.
Well,
Um,
that's why I suggested we watch them together because I didn't want to leave you hanging.
that's good because I was terrified at the thought that there could be a giant squid on the loose somewhere.
So, John and Dennis are in Thailand hunting for the elusive giant squid. They hope to be the first men in recorded history to catch one.
Fishermen.
Fishermen.
Yes. And so you didn't watch the episode proper?
No, I just watched it with the commentary.
Okay. So as John Lurie talks about on the commentary, he came up with the giant squid thing after the fact. So it's not in any of the dialogue. So instead the dialogue is it's sparse other than anecdotes
Yeah.
or them being incredibly weird around each other, which seems to be like the bit. And from the commentary, what's hilarious is that John Lurie never seems to know how much Dennis Hopper was in on the bit. Like
Yeah.
he just is like, Dennis Hopper's always fucking Dennis Hopper, man. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, that does sort of describe his acting. That's what the difference between Dennis Hopper and many other actors are. Dennis Hopper's always just played Dennis Hopper going back to 1955. Um, but yeah, so we open with a very intense the contrast of a very lovely shots of Thailand
Yes.
and then a very tense shot, serious, stoic Dennis Hopper
In his
um
hotel.
in his hotel. It looks like a Japanese whiskey commercial, right? Like
He did some of those, right? Dennis
right,
Hopper
I'm
definitely
sure.
did
I'm sure
those.
they
Yeah.
met doing a fashion show in Japan. What
Yeah.
people, I think we talked about this maybe when we were talking about the series.
A little bit.
Um, oh, with Matt Dillon.
Yeah.
What we don't understand in the modern era is that American celebrities very rarely did commercials in the United States. You didn't have Robin Williams doing Geico, right? Like,
Right.
but that didn't mean that he wasn't selling Bico, the British employees insurance company. We found out sometime in the 90s, oh look, there are all these fucking celebrities doing weird commercials in Japan. So it'd be stuff like, and it'd be politicians, like
Yeah.
Bob Dole might have sold a pen or something. Like it was fucked up. And it was just like this big reveal, and it turned out that most of the highest end ones were in Japan. So that's where like
Charles
Clint
Bronson.
Eastwood.
Charles Bronson did a great one where it's like cologne or something, and he's just
I
like
mean, it was all like cologne,
ripped and
yeah.
shirtless. John Lurie did one that was coffee. I can't think of anything. But if you've seen the movie Lost in Translation, the Bill Murray character going to Japan to shoot a whiskey commercial is based in reality.
Yes,
Like
that's
this
the
is what
bit.
they do.
That's
Yeah.
what they did before they made money from movies from money launderers like they do now. Like Al Pacino. Did I tell you to read that article? There's an
No.
article about Millennium Films. I don't remember. It's like at the Hollywood Reporter or Vanity Fair. It's this deep dive. These are the guys who were making all the Bruce Willis movies where he was already severely mentally impaired, and they were like feeding him lines through the thing and like
Yikes.
exploiting him and like making 13 movies with him a year because
Is
like
that why he did that AutoZone commercial or whatever that was about? It was about batteries or something where
that
it was
was
like
like
Die Hard.
that was AI.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. And they were like, they didn't have permission to do that. And AutoZone was like, oh, I thought they said we could. Yeah. Um,
Yikes.
but there's an interview, but there's like some movie they made where Al Pacino's in it with some woman who you're like, why is she in this Meryl Streep in her prime, like Oscar bait role? And it's just this nobody. It's because she's married to a billionaire and she wanted to make a movie. And so these guys made her a movie. And so there are like these receipts of Al Pacino texting the guy going, dude, she's terrible. You're paying me 2.5 million. 2.5 million gets you a loud, but sometimes quiet Pacino. I'm on, a solid B minus C plus performance for you
Yeah.
here. I need her to step up her game. And I'm just like, so literally Al Pacino and probably Robert De Niro just sit around going, I'm going to give a C plus performance today. Come on, 2.5 million for a C plus performance. However, Dennis Hopper can just sell whiskey because Dennis Hopper or Snickers bars. Where's that universe where Dennis Hopper just sold Snickers bars? But he's not like Harvey Keitel or something. He can't like turn around and act on a beat. He's
No, he's
just
just, he can brood like he does at the beginning of this
he
episode, and he
broods.
can, be like a spaced out hippie. Oh, that was weird.
Yeah,
Be like a spaced out hippie. Like that's what he can do.
those are the two things he can do, and he can do it. He can do it. His range is I don't know if he can brood when dressed as a hippie, but he can hippie while he's dressed as a brooder,
Yeah.
which he does in this, or you get an inkling of it because after we get to Thailand, after we meet Dennis Hopper, he goes and meets John at the air. Or no,
Yes. They
John
go they go from Bangkok where
to
Hopper
yes,
is in the hotel to a smaller place farther away from the city where they can, like an island where they can go fishing.
where, but there's also the shot where Hopper
And
arrives at the airport.
right.
I
So
can't remember
Hopper is flying from Bangkok to this
to
other
this place,
location.
but then they drive
Yeah.
more. Okay, so John Lurie's
There's
waiting
this
for him.
there's this
Wow.
long scene of John. Well, no. So John is waiting at the airport with a sign that says Mr. Hopper, which I think is adorable. They hug, and John explains that they met at a Comme des Garçons fashion show in Japan with uh Julian Sands and John Malkovich, among other people. I think Matt Dillon might have been there as well. Um, and if you've never seen those pictures of them, they're so fucking cool. That's the coolest group of guys ever. Anyway, um, then they get in this van and they start traveling where they're talking, but it's intercut with like scenery that they're passing, presumably, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's so beautiful. It's exactly
And
what you think of when you think of Thailand
in Asia, right? Or
or
wherever.
wherever.
So, yes.
Dennis Hopper does this hippie thing where he's like, "Oh man, this is so great. Look at that. This looks exactly like Asia or wherever we are. Like this is exactly what it should look like wherever we are." But he's
Isn't
doing the
it?
man thing. Hey man,
Isn't it
it's
just so
so
funny
funny.
that the hippies turned out to just enable the end of the world, like through their own greed, like
Yeah.
and stupidity and like fear? That's hilarious. It's so funny. But you missed the part because you didn't listen to the regular episode.
Oh
When
yeah.
we get to the airport, Dennis Hopper comes out and he sees John Lurie, and the narration says, "Oh, I was wrong. John's alive."
Oh right, I did hear that. Yeah. But doesn't say anything about Willem Dafoe.
Nope. In
Willem
this
Dafoe is still
universe,
dead.
Willem Dafoe's still
John
dead.
Lurie ate Willem Dafoe to survive on that lake in Maine.
Yep. But they also talk, well, they take a pee break, which I was just like, John Lurie's like, hey, can we pull over? I'm like, dude, he's not going to go fucking pee, is he? Yep. And it turns out that that's because there's a scene later on when they stop at a convenience store and Dennis Hopper's eating candy and John Lurie's having a beer. It turns out that we saw some of that out of order, and
Yeah.
we see John Lurie peeing out that beer before he has a chance to drink the beer.
Yeah.
But there's also this conversation about Easy Rider, about Dennis Hopper talking about how there could be a sequel because you never see him die. And it sounds like the most painful bit in the world, but then you listen to the commentary and John Lurie's like, yeah, no, that was all Dennis Hopper. Like he's actually been thinking about this for years. And you're
Yeah,
just like,
he's
holy
never stopped
shit.
thinking about this. Yeah.
He really wants to, it's like holy shit. And I don't 100% remember, but there is a not zero chance that this led to there being like discussion of an Easy Rider 2 in the 90s. Like go read your premieres, kids, and there might be discussion of that. Anyway, they don't they stop for the night, but it's really there we don't get any shots of what they do that night. There's the narration at this point just sort of ignore the narration. The narrative provided by the narration sort of ignores when there are problems in it. Like ostensibly they're on this 5 day motorboat trip into the hearts of Thailand.
Yeah.
Except they're not. They're right by their hotel. But and they're so they'd be staying on the boat, presumably, but there's a scene, this really fucking awkward scene. Is that in the first part or the second part where Hopper's talking to John Lurie about how God Bless America, the song, is based on God Bless the King? And it's
God
like,
save the
no,
king.
it's
Yeah.
God Save the King, but it's not, right? It's not. I believe they're entirely separate things because God Bless America is that fucking, let's start our Christian nationalism early.
No, but God Save the King is some American
It is
jingoist song.
God Save
Do
the
do
King is a
do
British
do
one.
do 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 do. That's God Save the King.
Okay, that's not God Bless the America.
No, but it is a different song that they're singing. It's a different American song, kind of patriotic bullshit song.
Yeah. Woody
I love
Guthrie
America.
criticized
Sorry.
the song, and in 1940 he wrote This Land Is Your Land, originally
This
titled God Bless America for Me. As a response, anti-Semitic groups such as the Ku Klux Klan, or a Christian nonprofit per the federal government, also protested the song due to its authorship by a Jewish immigrant. Weird that they're so Zionist. Okay.
my
Did,
so it is God Save the King is My Country 'Tis of Thee. My country 'tis of
okay.
thee, sweet land of
So
okay, sorry. So they get the song wrong,
they get the
and
song wrong.
it never goes
It never goes
mentioned.
anyway. I think that's in the second part because that at that point is when John Lurie has just started referring to Dennis Hopper as brother and being like, "You're a weird guy, brother. You're a weird
Yeah.
guy." So, because we find out in the commentary, they shot this for 8 days, basically. Dennis Hopper barely caught shit. There
He
was
doesn't
not
know
till
how to fish.
doesn't know how
There's
to
a whole
fish.
there's a whole thing in the commentary about how John had to keep untangling Dennis's line from the anchor, the motor, other people's lines. Like he just, and then there are shots of Dennis like with one fishing rod in front of him and one behind him, and he's doing these weird motions where he's just tugging on it. And John's like, who fishes like that? Nobody fishes. You don't turn on a fishing channel and see people fishing like that. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's so funny.
Okay, so was Hopper ever in New York? Yes. So there's a bit that I thought there might be some more context for in the commentary, but there's not. But it's Dennis Hopper tells him that they should go fishing in off the 49th Street Pier or something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay. And that, but with all the additional context, it's just like, no, no, I don't think you guys were fishing. But anyway, so yeah, they travel with their boat
Lonnie.
driver is Lon. We find out in the commentary, which is no surprise. This is he was John Lurie's point man, who and just like we commented on with the Jamaica episode, he had a sidekick in that who wasn't the guest, and he talks about it. He's like, I love the ones where I have a sidekick who wasn't the guest. And Yeah, Leon.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
looking at your cat who's got a thing on his head again.
He's got a little owie on his paw, and we don't want him cutting it open
Mm,
again with his
gotcha.
cleanliness habits. So, yeah, so Lon is just the boat driver. The commentary is really funny because John Lurie's like, yeah, the you never see me. What you're not seeing here is me yelling at the cameramen over the guest shoulders, and you're also not seeing me and Lon doing all the fucking work,
Yeah.
and Dennis Hopper being bewildered. Like, but then
Oh.
there's stuff about Dennis Hopper and his Coca-Cola. He had some Diet Coke airlifted into Thailand because he wasn't drinking the water. Is that what we were supposed to get from all that?
Yeah, so he wouldn't have anything with ice in it. He wouldn't have anything with their water. It had to be bottled water.
Okay. So the fruit that he had in his mango latte without ice, his warm mango latte, that fruit would have been grown in the water. Also, the cream would have been made with
You know,
water.
when you have a fixation on something like that, it's really just about the water
Okay.
itself and not about the other stuff, you know? He was very heavily fixated on that. And, it doesn't always make sense when people have those things, because I have those things.
Well, it's also just kind of a flex, though, because he's supposed to be this hippie who's experiencing the world, but he won't acculturate. It's like cultural appropriation isn't, anyway. Uh,
Hey, John does it. The other thing about
John
Lon is
does.
the other thing
John,
about Lon, the guide,
yeah.
is that John says, I don't remember if it was the first or second episode, that he and Lon, although they couldn't communicate, had like an unspoken language that they could communicate with one another. John in English and Lon in Thai, although we never hear Lon speak.
Oh, I
And
didn't.
you didn't catch that?
No, I
The point,
did, but I didn't think it meant that Lon didn't speak any English. I just think it meant that they worked up a really good rapport for how they could because I mean, I don't know what it's like to go out fishing in general, but really specifically, I don't know what it's like to go out fishing, us. I mean, it sounds like John Lurie didn't, he wasn't stealing the Japanese guy's money. Like he was serious at the end. He's like, I want to do another one of these, which
yeah.
technically makes it totally okay for this show. It is not a miniseries. If you have anyone in your life, Emily, who you need to tell that this is not an exception, that John Lurie wanted another season, he was going to get JD fucking Salinger to do it. Um,
Did you watch that
I
really
did.
uncomfortable Conan interview?
I did. That was
I love at the
hilarious.
end that Conan's like, well, on that note, I guess we're gonna wrap it up. It's so fucking funny.
It's just like, oh, I don't know that I should have had you on here.
I can relate to John Lurie so much because those awkward things that I think in my mind and can't say out loud, he says out loud.
Okay, so it's this Conan O'Brien clip. It's on YouTube. It's where they're talking about fishing with John like it's recent,
Yeah,
but he looks 40 years older.
he looks older. Yeah.
John Lurie of Stranger Than Paradise is one of your, I don't know, awkwardly beautiful waif boys of the
Oh,
straight waif boys of the 80s, like of black and white. Like it's a very specific subset, but like he's basically like he could have done
beautiful.
that. He could have done a bunch of ads, right? He could have done
He's
artsy fucking
beautiful.
Calvin Klein ads. But
I don't know if
he
I'd like that, but
aged.
yeah,
Well,
he
you might
aged.
not like it, but they would do them because he could wear a suit, he could wear a little fedora. You'd love it. He'd wear a fedora, an untied tie,
So, he
cobblestone street.
he
Calm down, Emily.
for some period of time, John Lurie was addicted to heroin.
Ah, okay.
I don't know when that stopped. I'm
Okay.
guessing 5 years before this show, but at some point the chickens come home to roost, and instead of being a waif, you put on a little weight because you can't keep it off. by doing heroin every day. Like,
Well, there you go. I
so,
suppose.
but in this, he there's a conversation again, I don't know where they're laying on this boat and John's got his long, scrawny legs hanging over the side of the boat. And he asks Dennis, like, should I get my legs shortened so they're not so long? And I was like, no, never, never.
Then there, yeah, and that's also where they talk about John's weird experiences with the guy who played Dennis the Menace on TV.
Oh yeah. It wasn't Dennis the Menace, it was his manager?
Oh,
Or
right,
did he
yeah.
be or did he become a manager after
He
being a
became a
child actor?
manager, I think
So
was what
maybe
he
it
said.
was he writes
Like,
about it in his book too.
okay.
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah, sounds very weird.
Yeah.
Um,
He comes
then
to LA and he's hitchhiking and he's picked up by either Jay North or Jay North's manager, offered a place to stay. The guy gives him a back rub and tells him he's going to go get, some booze or whatever. And in the time the guy leaves, John just takes off and leaves a nice friendly note about how, thank you for your hospitality. I don't think that this experience is for me. Has a little gay panic.
what's and then Howard Porter. Who the hell's Howard Porter?
Oh.
So yeah, it doesn't seem like that. So then there's a story from Dennis Hopper about some guy whose name I thought was Howard Porter, but apparently not, about how Dennis Hopper like got kicked out of his house for being too big of a drunk. And
And he
John Murray,
wears it as a badge of pride. What an asshole. This guy calls him like an animal or something.
oh God. And then Dennis Hopper talking about his wives. Oh, he's just like, I had this great air, treasured possession. And John Lure's like, what happened to it? He's like, one of my girlfriends or wives, they tore it up. Because when you're married, you just hate the other person so much, and you want
It
to
was
fucking make them so miserable. You just
I
have
think
to do something.
it was
One of
a
those moments.
letter. It was a letter from that guy you
Yeah,
had
yeah, yeah.
mentioned that said something like, I've never seen anybody who could drink like you. I've never seen like I really appreciate the art form of you being an absolute maniacal lunatic. But I just don't want you in my house. And it was this treasured possession that then one of his wives just ripped into shreds. What
The
an
first thing
asshole.
we get to hear about Dennis Hopper's romantic relationships is when they apparently see like a rubber tree, and Dennis Hopper somehow goes, "Oh, rubber doormat. Hey, I never knew why my girlfriend said I treated her like a doormat." He's like, "Never knew what she meant. Figured that out a little bit ago." And I'm like, "What the fuck?
Wow.
Wow."
Wow.
I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, I didn't realize Dennis Hopper had significant partners. I'm sure they all live with amazing settlements and NDAs." Um, yeah, so the first part ends with them. Is it when they get on the squid boat? So basically, part
Yes.
one
Is
is
them
them
just
being
kind of fishing
taken
around.
to this rendezvous point where they're going to get on a squid hunter ship and go find the giant squid. At
Yeah.
this point, Lon leaves the story, which is too bad, especially since we know he was 5 feet away for 90% of the rest of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but Lon's cousin's there or something, and Lon's cousin finds the entire experience hilarious. So they're on this squid boat, and this is where you're like, oh, this is where John Lurie got the idea. And he wanted to do the squid boat because what the squid boat does is it goes out fishing at night and it puts up a bunch of lights to draw the fish up to see what's going on at the surface, brings in a big haul. Not
Yeah.
with John Lurie, because John Lurie is bad luck for fishing, is basically the other subtext of fishing with John. The
He's
fisher
yeah,
boy,
he's
John Lurie.
he's not very good at it.
Is painting with John entirely about how they can't find canvas or paints?
No.
Okay.
No, you should watch Painting with John. It is the most like weird Zen thing I've ever seen in my life, and I love it to pieces. Not just
Okay.
because we get to see John Lurie acting goofy, but he's
Okay.
like much older, he's very heavy, he's bald, he's, all of these things, and he's got these two women. One is his assistant, and one is like his cook. And they just like the two women are so game to just do weird shit with John, and it is so much fun. I highly recommend it.
Okay. But it's 2 seasons, so.
Yeah, three, I think. Three.
Oh wow, cool. Okay. Um, so yes, they're out on the ship. John is correct. The fishing boat is absolutely beautiful at night.
Yeah.
And then they do a night fishing scene, and pretty quickly, and it turns out that the squid boat crew isn't happy to be part of this shoot. They've
Not
got
at
Lon's
all.
cousin with them, and Lon's cousin is very game, so he gets to hang out for the um night fishing scene and sort of give
He
the
gets to hang with
impression
he gets to hang
that
with
he's a crew
John,
member. Yeah,
John and Dennis. And it's very sweet.
yeah. And then pretty quickly we are back to Lon's boat. Though we don't say it's Lon's boat. Instead, they go to there's John and Dennis walking around Thailand somewhere looking at temples. And the
Oh, and they go
sound
to the
guys, yeah,
squid
the
monks.
squid
Yeah.
monks. They first go to the cave where they learn squid knowledge, then they go see the squid monks. And we find out that some of the reason the footage is like this is because the sound wasn't there and the crew didn't tell John because they didn't want him to be mad at them,
Yeah.
is what he says. So, and then we also find out on the commentary that this is the only time that Dennis Hopper wasn't game. Basically, John Lurie wanted to go around like a slack-jawed tourist, and Dennis Hopper's like,
Yeah.
nah, man.
Yeah.
Instead, they go see these monks where we find out Dennis Hopper took the tea and dumped it out because he wasn't going to have any of their water. And then, and so presumably John Lurie drank the tea, and we do not have stories about him having the squirts. So it's very funny. But anyway, it's funny, not haha.
Yeah.
So they they're back to the regular boat with the line from Rob Webb after stealing a squid. But they borrow the squid monk's boat without asking, and then they're back out fishing again. They have their little talk about Jay North or his agent. They pretty much nothing, and then they fall asleep, and they're like, this giant squid has hypnotized them, which we actually had established earlier that the giant squid has a hypnotizing effect on mammals, and it was like it seemed like a stupid throwaway line, but
Yeah.
instead it actually is
It
the
comes back, baby.
resolution. Yeah, Chekhov's gun here. It hypnotizes them, so we get footage of John and Dennis Hopper relaxing while filming or fishing. Dennis takes a nap. We get some sped up footage of them zooming around with a passion. They don't know why they're so inspired to race the boat around, but they do. And then they go to town. They land, and it's the shot from the end of the opening titles,
Hmm.
which I thought was cool. And then
John
they
was unable to start the boat because they're back on Lon's boat
right,
and he couldn't start it. So you see there's a scene of him like
rowing,
rowing it in
and Dennis
because
Hopper not helping.
and
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper not helping.
But yeah, so then they act like they're on some deserted island, but really they just walk into town where,
We forgot the ping pong scene.
oh God, the ping pong scene. So that was the first episode when
That was the
Lon is
first
finding
episode.
out where they can fish while on their way to the squid rendezvous. And
There's
yes,
so much
so
more action in this one. So many more like different plot points. And this is where John is talking about in the commentary. So they're playing ping pong and John's like Dennis is cheating. Like he just keeps cheating. Watch him cheat. And then he talks about there's enough footage that he could edit. They're both terrible at it, but there's enough footage that he can edit it together to make a volley seem to go on for a long time. And then that's where he talks about it being difficult to act and direct at the same
yeah,
time, where he's trying to engage with his guest, but then, you know, he sees a cameraman in the wrong place or something, and he'll just start yelling. And later he talks about that in the context of this episode. Like, we were here for 8 days, there's like 50 hours of footage, and like I have to cut out all of the scenes. Like, I have to sit there and watch myself turn into an asshole on camera when I'm yelling at everybody. And I have to edit around all of that to make it look like I'm having a good time and that I'm engaging with my guests and that my guests aren't horrified at my behavior. It was very funny. Sorry.
Poor John. Well, also when you think about it,
not poor John.
this whole thing is solved now, right? Like you have two iPhones in little teeny stabilizing rigs, and none of this is a problem.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is it's time for Fishing with John season 2.
If only he could get Nike to sponsor
If
him.
only he really wanted Nike to sponsor it. Yes, that
He
is
said that
the weirdest diversion of the
Well,
commentary.
he said it in the first or second episode.
Does it in okay.
And then, but in this one, or in these two, he mentions it half a dozen times.
He is it implies that he reached out to Nike and they never called him back or something. Like he's put out. Like it's like I wore Nikes every episode. There's like the fishing, the line and reel companies wouldn't sponsor them because
they're real fisher people and they took
take
offense.
this seriously.
They took offense to how blasé he was about fishing.
Yeah, and then it ends with them rowing on the boat.
They're in town.
Yeah.
There's a couple of great lines where Mr. Hopper, can we eat now, please, Mr. Hopper? Oh, and then there's Johnny. Like, why do you call me Johnny?
Yeah.
That's not showing me the proper amount of respect.
Yeah.
I love
the first half. That was pretty funny.
But then he's like, Mr. Hopper, can we eat? Can we eat? And he's acting like he's acting like a hungry man, but he's acting like a baby a little bit. And he's just like, I just want to eat. And Dennis is like, let's go over here and hang out with these hippies. He's like, I fucking hate hippies. I want food. We never see the hippies.
We never see the hippies. Do we see the meat? We do see the meat because that's the mango latte scene with the ice. But yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. But yeah, that is just realistically a man being hungry and not being fed. Yeah. I forgot what we're like. I'm the same way. I'm the same way.
Sure. Completely human reaction. But it does kind of come across as like annoyed teenager, like, come on, I need food.
We don't actually ever see what they eat. So there you go. So anyway, they go back out
on a boat. Or there's another shot on a boat again.
There's another shot on a boat. Did they go fishing again, or is this just the wrap up?
I think this is just the wrap up.
Yeah, we get, Rob Webb talking to us about how this is just the life of the fisherman, the man, and the sea or something. And then that's it. And
there's a great Rob Webb line, which we missed out, the Andaman Sea.
Oh, yes.
Boogly, the Andaman Sea.
John on the commentary talks about how he just likes getting Rob Webb to say weird things.
Yeah, and then produces a bunch of lines that he had Rob Webb read, apparently, that we never actually got to hear, which is funny.
Yeah.
I don't remember them now, but it's funny to hear people say weird things. Yeah, and then the end is this beautiful scene. They're on a boat, the sun is going down. John is driving and Dennis is on the front of the boat, just relaxing, and they off into the sea they go. It's beautiful. I'm so glad.
In reality, the boat John was lost and he just put out down the anchor and they had to
he didn't know how to get back. Yeah.
And he was terrified Dennis Hopper was going to kill him on the boat, basically. But still.
There's a whole conversation at some point earlier on where when they're talking about the God Save the King, where John's like, I should have had you come and scare them into stopping. Like, I was hoping you would come out, wake up, and scare them into not singing anymore. And John in the commentary says, I don't think Dennis Hopper realizes how scary he is, how frightening he is. And So that kind of theme running to the end where he's like, I'm afraid that Dennis is going to be very mad at me and kill me. I thought was
Dennis
fun.
Hopper in River's Edge.
I don't know. I can't tell you how many.
Yes, it is. Oh, yes. That's why. That's why it's one of those parts where you're like, oh, he's still just gonna kill you. Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. So yeah, so fishing with John. Uh certainly certainly a different experience than our last regular show.
Oh, yes, I agree. A very pleasant surprise. Do we have an announcement for next season?
We do have an announcement for next season. Thanks to being curious what Dick Van Patten did
Oh
before Eight
no.
is Enough, he
Oh,
was in When Things Were Rotten,
oh
a
yes.
1975 American sitcom created by Mel Brooks, set in 1197 as a parody of the Robin Hood legend. It aired for half a season, and it stars the guy who played Jaime the Robot on Get Smart. Uh,
Well, this is going to be
Received
exciting.
mostly critical acclaim.
Oh, there's a lot of people I recognize.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah. So
Dudley Moore? Okay. Oh God, as a sheik. Jesus Christ. Uh, okay. Well, this will be
but it'll
fun.
be fun and it'll be under an hour an episode.
Yes.
So there.
Yes.
Sitcoms.
We should watch Robin Hood Men in Tights after and
Okay.
compare them.
Okay.
I love Robin Hood Men in Tights. I
Okay.
love Carrie Elways. Oh,
All
he's a
right.
dream.
We'll do it.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you for coming along with us on our journey of watching Fishing with John. I hope you all enjoyed. Andrew, I hope you enjoyed
I did. It
me
is streaming on Criterion, so you can
streaming on
watch
Criterion.
all of Fishing with John for what, $8 a month?
Yeah, you can just
Cancel it.
watch it over and over and over and
You can
over
watch the
and over.
commentary tracks.
Yep.
There you go.
Um, Next season, season 11 starts next week, presumably.
Sweet,
We'll be
presumably.
watching When Things Were Rotten. I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to it. Andrew, I'll see you in Television Land.
See you in television land, Emily.